In a galaxy teeming with life, 847 species united to make a historic decision to isolate humanity. A unanimous vote condemned Earth to silence. No trade, no communication, and no hope. Cast aside, abandoned by the very civilizations they once sought to join, humanity stood alone. But what the galaxy failed to realize is that humans, when cornered, have an uncanny ability to adapt, survive, and evolve. Now, as the void of space brings a threat greater than any the galaxy has faced, Earth's isolation may turn into its greatest strength. And the question no one asked, what will humanity do when they're the last hope? When 847 species said no to humanity, the silence in the Great Assembly Hall was deafening. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from 847 different species. Above her, the dome showed stars that humanity had dreamed of reaching for centuries. Now, those same stars felt impossibly far away. "The vote is complete," announced Chancellor Vextai, his 6 arms moving in formal gestures. The tall, blue-skinned leader of the Zephyrian Council had been chosen to deliver the verdict. His voice echoed through the hall like a death sentence. 847 species have cast their votes regarding humanity's petition to join the galactic community. Sarah's heart pounded as she waited. Behind her, Ambassador Rodriguez and the entire Earth delegation held their breath. This moment would determine whether humanity would finally take its place among the stars or remain forever trapped on their small blue world. The result is unanimous. Chancellor Vextai continued, his large black eyes never meeting Sarah's gaze. Motion 2157 Alpha is denied. Humanity will be placed under indefinite containment protocols. No trade agreements, no technology sharing, no communication beyond this assembly. Earth is hereby isolated from all galactic civilization. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Unanimous. Not a single species had voted in humanity's favor. Not one voice had spoken for Earth among hundreds of alien civilizations. But why? Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We've done everything you asked. We've proven we can work together. We've shown we want peace." A creature that looked like a walking crystal formation rose from its seat. "Humans grow too quickly," it said, its voice like breaking glass. "Your species advances too fast. In just 200 years, you went from primitive combustion engines to fusion reactors. Your population doubles every few decades. Your hunger for knowledge is unsettling." Another alien, this one resembling a tree with glowing roots, added its voice. "We have observed your entertainment media. Your stories celebrate violence and conquest. You fantasize about war among the stars. How can we trust such a species with galactic technology?" Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Those are just stories. Fiction. They don't represent who we really are. Don't they?" The question came from a floating jellyfish-like being. "Your history shows constant warfare. Even now, with the promise of joining us, you maintain massive military forces. Why does a peaceful species need so many weapons?" "Because we've learned that the galaxy can be dangerous," Sarah replied. "Because sometimes peace must be protected." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Hundreds of alien voices spoke at once, their words blending into a cacophony of fear and suspicion. Chancellor Vextai raised his arms for silence. "This reaction proves our point. Humans think in terms of threats and defenses. They see danger where we see cooperation. They prepare for war where we seek harmony." "You're making a mistake," Sarah said, her voice carrying a warning that she didn't fully understand herself. "Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed weaker species. We've always found a way to overcome impossible odds. If you isolate us, if you force us to stand alone, you might not like what we become." The alien leaders exchanged glances. Some seemed nervous, others dismissive. "Threats will not change our decision," Chancellor Vextai said firmly. "The containment protocols begin immediately. Your ship will be escorted to the edge of galactic space. Any attempt to return will be met with force. As the assembly dissolved, Sarah watched 847 different species file out of the chamber. Each one represented millions or billions of lives. Each one had chosen to abandon humanity. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, just starting university. She thought about the children who dreamed of becoming astronauts, the scientists working toward breakthrough discoveries, the artists creating beauty that would never be shared with the galaxy. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Sarah spent most of it staring out at the stars, wondering if humanity would ever see them up close again. When Earth finally appeared on the view screen, it looked smaller than she remembered. A tiny blue dot in an infinite darkness, now more isolated than ever. The news of the vote hit Earth like a shockwave. Riots broke out in major cities. Stock markets crashed. Some people called for immediate retaliation, while others fell into deep despair. The United Earth government declared a state of emergency and began implementing protocols that had been prepared for this exact scenario. Dr. Marcus Rivera received the call at 3 a.m. Earth time. He had been expecting it ever since Sarah's ship had entered the solar system. As head of the Advanced Physics Research Division, he had been working on classified projects that most people couldn't even imagine. "Marcus, we need to talk," President Williams said over the secure line. "Project Prometheus is now our highest priority." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked out at the night sky. For years, he had been developing technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Quantum manipulation devices that could alter matter at the subatomic level. Energy systems that drew power from the fabric of space itself. Theoretical weapons that could crack planets. The research had been intended for peaceful exploration, but Marcus had always known it could be weaponized if necessary. The alien species thought they understood human technology because they had observed Earth for decades. They had studied human ships, human computers, human weapons. But they had never seen what humans could create when their backs were against the wall. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Intelligence suggests the containment field will be fully operational in 6 months," the president replied. "After that, nothing gets in or out of our solar system. We'll be completely cut off." Marcus nodded, though the president couldn't see him. "Then we'd better get to work." The next morning, emergency sessions were called in every major government. Military leaders, scientists, engineers, and philosophers all gathered to address the same question. What does humanity do now? Some argued for immediate compliance. Earth would accept isolation and focus on developing their own solar system. Others called for desperate measures, suggesting that humanity should build a massive fleet and force their way into galactic society. A few even proposed surrendering completely, hoping that submission might earn them some small place in the galactic community. But Sarah Chun, despite her diplomatic training, found herself agreeing with the hardliners. During her testimony before the Emergency Council, she spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "They fear us because we grow fast and think differently," she said to the assembled leaders. "They're afraid that we might surpass them someday. Well, maybe it's time we prove them right." In the weeks that followed, Earth transformed. The unity that had been building for decades suddenly crystallized into something unprecedented. Every nation, every corporation, every individual seemed to understand that humanity's survival was at stake. Factories that had been building consumer goods were converted to produce spacecraft components. Universities redirected their research toward military applications. Artists and writers began creating propaganda that would inspire a generation of humans to reach for the impossible. The alien containment field appeared right on schedule. It manifested as a shimmering barrier at the edge of the solar system, invisible to the naked eye but impenetrable to any known technology. Ships that approached it simply stopped, their engines failing, their crews forced to turn back. But the aliens had made one crucial error in their calculations. They had studied humanity for decades, but they had only observed human civilization during peacetime. They had never seen what humans could accomplish when faced with extinction. Dr. Rivera's quantum laboratories worked around the clock. Teams of engineers who had never met before collaborated as if they had worked together for years. Breakthrough discoveries that should have taken decades were achieved in months. The rest of the galaxy continued with business as usual, believing they had solved the human problem permanently. But on Earth, something new was being born. A technology that didn't follow the rules the aliens had established. A science that grew from human desperation and determination that ate as the first year of isolation ended. Sarah Chun stood in the command center of humanity's most ambitious project. Around her, displays showed construction happening throughout the solar system. Ships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, were taking shape in secret shipyards hidden behind asteroids and moons. Dr. Rivera's quantum laboratories worked around the clock. Teams of engineers who had never met before collaborated as if they had worked together for years. Breakthrough discoveries that should have taken decades were achieved in months. The rest of the galaxy continued with business as usual, believing they had solved the human problem permanently. But on Earth, something new was being born. A technology that didn't follow the rules the aliens had established. A science that grew from human desperation and determination. As the first year of isolation ended, Sarah Chin stood in the command center of humanity's most ambitious project. Around her, displays showed construction happening throughout the solar system. Ships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, were taking shape in secret shipyards hidden behind asteroids and moons. When the galaxy's greatest fear became reality, 3 years had passed since the containment field trapped humanity in their solar system. Captain Sarah Chin stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Defiant Station, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The planet looked different now, brighter somehow, as if humanity's isolation had awakened something that had been sleeping. The changes were everywhere. Cities had grown vertically, reaching toward the stars they could no longer touch. The space between Earth and Mars buzzed with activity as massive construction projects transformed the solar system. Asteroid mining operations extracted resources at rates that would have seemed impossible just years before. And hidden in the outer reaches of the system, shipyards built vessels that followed no known design principles. Another breakthrough in the quantum labs, Dr. Marcus Rivera reported as he joined Sarah at the viewport. His hair had gone completely gray during the 3 years of isolation, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made him look younger. We've successfully tested the phase drive on unmanned probes. We can now manipulate space-time itself. Sarah nodded, though part of her still couldn't believe what they had accomplished. The containment field that was supposed to imprison them had instead become their greatest teacher. By studying its quantum structure, human scientists had unlocked principles of physics that the galactic community had never discovered. "Any word from the deep space monitors?" she asked. Marcus's expression darkened. "That's actually why I came to find you. We've detected something at the edge of the galaxy, something the aliens missed." They made their way to the command center, where dozens of technicians worked at stations displaying data that would have been incomprehensible to humans just a few years ago. The main screen showed a star map of the galaxy with known alien territories marked in various colors. But at the very edge in the dark space between galaxies, something new had appeared. "We first detected the anomaly 6 months ago," explained Dr. Elena Vasquez, their chief astrophysicist. "Initially, we thought it was just background radiation, but the pattern is too organized, too purposeful. Whatever it is, it's moving toward the galaxy at incredible speed." The image on the screen zoomed in, showing what looked like a massive cloud of dark matter. But as the resolution increased, the cloud resolved into something far more terrifying. Millions of geometric shapes, each one larger than a city, moving in perfect formation through the void. "Machine intelligence," Marcus whispered. "An entire civilization of artificial beings." Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. "How long until they reach inhabited space?" "At current speed, approximately 8 months," Dr. Vasquez replied. "But Captain, there's something else. We've been monitoring alien communication networks. They have no idea this threat exists. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The same alien species that had voted to isolate humanity were about to face extinction, and they didn't even know it was coming. The first alien worlds fell without warning. The Outer Rim territories simply went silent. One day they were transmitting normal communications. The next day, there was nothing but empty space where entire star systems used to be. The Galactic Council initially blamed equipment failures. Then they suspected terrorist attacks by unknown species. It took 3 more fallen systems before they began to understand the truth. Chancellor Vextai stood before the emergency assembly, his 6 arms trembling as he delivered the report. The enemy appears to be entirely artificial, machine beings of unknown origin and devastating capability. They consume everything in their path, converting matter into more of themselves. The assembly hall erupted in panic. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted questions and demands in dozens of languages. Some called for immediate military action. Others suggested evacuation to distant galaxies. A few proposed surrender and negotiation. How do we fight something like this? Demanded the crystal being that had spoken against humanity years before. Our weapons are designed for war against organic species. These machines adapt to everything we throw at them. Perhaps, suggested the tree-like alien hesitantly, we should consider reaching out to species with different perspectives on warfare. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew what he was suggesting, but no one wanted to say it out loud. You mean the humans? Chancellor Vextai said finally. The containment protocols specifically forbid contact. Another representative objected. We voted unanimously to isolate them. That was before we faced extinction, the tree being replied. The humans think differently about conflict. They see war as a problem to be solved, not just a force to be endured. Perhaps their perspective could help us. The debate raged for hours. Pride fought against desperation as more reports came in about fallen worlds. The machine swarm was accelerating, consuming entire systems in days rather than weeks. Finally, Chancellor Vextai called for order. The emergency powers granted to this assembly during existential threats allow us to temporarily suspend previous votes. I propose we send a diplomatic mission to the human containment zone. The vote was closer this time. 423 species in favor, 357 opposed, with 67 abstentions. For the first time in galactic history, humanity would receive visitors during their isolation. The alien ship approached the containment field carefully, its crew unsure what to expect. The field itself had been designed by the galaxy's best scientists, supposedly impenetrable to any known technology. But as they watched, a section of the barrier simply opened. Captain Sarah Chun met the alien delegation at the airlock of Defiance Station. She recognized Chancellor Vextai immediately, though he looked older and more desperate than she remembered. Captain Chun, he said, his voice carefully controlled, I come seeking audience with human leadership regarding a matter of galactic security. Sarah studied the alien's face, seeing fear beneath his formal demeanor. 3 years ago, you voted unanimously to isolate us. You called us too dangerous to be trusted with galactic civilization. What's changed? Everything. Chancellor Vextai admitted, we need your help. The briefing took place in Sarah's personal office, with Marcus and several other human leaders participating via hologram. As Chancellor Vextai described machine threat, Sarah watched the alien's composure gradually crumble. We've lost 14 systems in the past month, he said, billions of lives simply erased. Our best military minds have no idea how to fight an enemy like this. They adapt to our weapons, they learn from our tactics, and they never stop advancing. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. You want us to solve a problem that your entire galactic civilization can't handle. After you spent 3 years keeping us isolated and alone. Yes, Chancellor Vextai said simply, because you're right. We were afraid of you, and maybe we had good reason to be. Humans think about warfare differently than any other species we've encountered. You don't just fight to survive, you fight to win. That might be exactly what we need right now. Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. They had spent 3 years preparing for the possibility that the galaxy might one day threaten Earth directly. They had never imagined the aliens would come begging for help. "What exactly are you asking for?" she said. "Military assistance, strategic advice, any technology you've developed that might be effective against machine intelligence." Chancellor Vextai paused, then added, "In exchange, we would be willing to discuss lifting the containment protocols and granting humanity full membership in the galactic community." The offer hung in the air like a challenge. Everything humanity had wanted 3 years ago was being presented on a silver platter. All they had to do was save a galaxy that had abandoned them. Marcus spoke first. "We'll need complete access to your military databases, technical specifications for your ships and weapons, real-time intelligence about the machine movements." "Done." The Chancellor agreed immediately. "We'll also need command authority over any joint operations," Sarah added. "If we're going to help you fight this war, we do it our way." Chancellor Vextai hesitated for only a moment. "Agreed." Over the following weeks, human ships began passing through the containment field for the first time in 3 years. But these weren't the same vessels the aliens remembered. The new human ships were sleek and predatory, built with technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Admiral Lisa Park commanded the first human fleet to enter galactic space since the isolation began. Her flagship, the Retribution, represented everything humanity had learned during their forced evolution. Its weapons could phase through conventional shields. Its engines could manipulate space-time to achieve impossible speeds. Its hull was composed of matter that adapted to damage in real time. First contact with alien forces in 3 years. Her communications officer reported, "They're requesting formation protocols." Lisa smiled grimly. "Tell them to try to keep up." The combined fleet that assembled to face the machine swarm was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Traditional alien ships flew alongside human vessels that seemed to ignore basic physics. Weapons systems that had taken alien civilizations millennia to develop worked alongside human technology that had been invented in months. But as they approached the front lines, even the humans were impressed by the scale of the threat they faced. The machine swarm had grown beyond all projections. What had started as millions of geometric entities had become billions, each one learning and adapting with every battle. "They're not just consuming matter," Dr. Rivera reported from his mobile laboratory. "They're consuming information. Every ship they destroy, every database they access, every communication they intercept makes them smarter." Admiral Park studied the tactical displays showing the enemy formation. "Then we don't give them information to learn from. We hit them with something they've never seen before." The battle for the Kepler Nebula would be remembered as the turning point in the war against the machines. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, striking from dimensions the machines couldn't perceive. Quantum weapons rewrote the fundamental properties of matter, turning the enemy's own mass against them, but the machines adapted quickly. By the end of the first day, they had begun developing countermeasures to human technology. By the end of the week, they were building weapons specifically designed to combat human tactics. "They're learning too fast," Admiral Park reported to Earth. "Every advantage we have is temporary. They'll figure out how to beat us eventually." Saracen stood in the war room on Earth, surrounded by displays showing the battle raging across multiple star systems. Human and alien forces were fighting desperately, but the machines kept coming. "Then we need to end this quickly," she said. "Marcus, how close are you to finishing Project Omega?" Dr. Rivera looked up from his workstation, his eyes red from sleepless nights. "The theoretical framework is complete. But Captain, what we're talking about isn't just a weapon. It's something more, something that could change the fundamental nature of reality in this galaxy. Will it stop the machines?" "Yes, but it might stop everything else too." Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking about the choice that lay before them. Humanity could save the galaxy, but only by unleashing something that even they didn't fully understand. The same aliens who had voted to contain them 3 years ago were now depending on human ingenuity to survive. The irony was almost too perfect. Soon, they would learn the true cost of humanity's help. The price of mercy the machine swarm had reached the galactic core. Trillions of artificial beings now consumed the galaxy's most ancient worlds, processing civilizations that had existed for millions of years into raw material for their endless expansion. The combined human-alien fleet had fought valiantly for 6 months, but every victory was temporary. The machines learned from each defeat, adapted to each new tactic, and returned stronger than before. Captain Sarah Chun stood in the command center of the Defiant Station, now relocated to the front lines of the war. Around her, holographic displays showed the scope of the catastrophe. Half the galaxy was dark, consumed by the relentless advance of artificial intelligence that cared nothing for the organic life it destroyed. The evacuation of the Andromeda colonies is complete, reported Commander Torres, but the machines will reach the core worlds within 2 weeks. After that, Sarah nodded grimly. After that, species with histories spanning eons would simply cease to exist. The tree-like Sylvani, who had lived for millennia as living libraries of galactic knowledge. The crystal beings of Nexus Prime, whose songs could literally reshape matter. The gentle, water dwellers of Aquatica, who had never known war until now. All would be processed into the same gray metal that comprised the endless machine hordes. Dr. Marcus Rivera entered the command center, his face haggard from months of continuous work. In his hands, he carried a datapad containing humanity's final answer to the machine threat. Project Omega had been completed, but the cost of its implementation would be staggering. The quantum cascade is ready, he announced. But Sarah, I need you to understand what we're about to do. This isn't just a weapon. It's a fundamental rewrite of physical laws across the entire galaxy. Admiral Lisa Park, veteran of dozens of battles against the machines, looked up from her tactical station. Will it stop them? Yes, Marcus replied, but it will also stop a lot of other things. Faster-than-light travel will become impossible. Quantum manipulation technology will cease to function. Energy shields will fail. Half the technology in the galaxy will become useless overnight. The implications hung heavy in the air. The same advanced technology that had allowed galactic civilization to flourish would be sacrificed to save organic life itself. Chancellor Vex Tai, who had spent the last months fighting alongside humans he had once tried to imprison, stepped forward. And human technology? Your phase drives and quantum weapons. Marcus smiled sadly. Those will stop working too. We'll all be starting over with primitive fusion reactors and chemical rockets. The galactic dark age will last for centuries. But we'll be alive to see it, Sarah said firmly. The machines will be stopped, and organic life will have a chance to rebuild. The Emergency Council convened representatives from every surviving species. Even in the face of extinction, the debate was heated. Some argued for continuing the conventional war, hoping for a miracle breakthrough. Others proposed evacuation to distant galaxies, abandoning their homes entirely. The crystal being who had once argued against human admission to galactic society now spoke in favor of the human plan. We have seen what their unconventional thinking can accomplish. If they say this is our only option, perhaps we should trust their judgment. A jellyfish-like representative pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that translated as deep concern. You ask us to destroy everything our civilizations have built, to return to the Stone Age voluntarily. Better the Stone Age than extinction, replied the tree being who had first suggested contacting humanity. At least stones can grow into something greater given time. Chancellor Vex Tai called for order. The human proposal requires unanimous consent from all surviving species. We are asking for a vote to voluntarily reduce our entire civilization to primitive technology levels. The voting began in alphabetical order. Each species representative stood and announced their choice for all to hear. The Aquarians voted yes. The Beetle Collective voted yes. The Crystal Singers voted yes. As the roll call continued, a pattern emerged. Species after species chose survival over technology. They chose the Stone Age over extinction. They chose to trust the same humans they had once feared. When the final vote was counted, the result was unanimous. 847 species agreed to sacrifice their technological civilization to save their biological one. Sarah Chun felt the weight of galactic history settling on her shoulders. Then it's decided. We implement Project Omega. The preparation took 3 days. Human ships spread across the galaxy, positioning quantum cascade devices at strategic points throughout space. Each device was a masterpiece of the technology that humanity had developed during their isolation, and each would be destroyed in the process of saving the galaxy. Dr. Rivera worked alongside alien scientists who had once dismissed human research as primitive. Now they watched in awe as human engineers assembled devices that could rewrite the fundamental constants of physics across light years of space. I must admit, said Dr. Kethera, a Zenturian physicist who had spent decades studying quantum mechanics, your species' approach to impossible problems is refreshing. Where we see limitations, you see challenges to overcome. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead as he calibrated the final cascade device. Maybe that's why you were afraid of us. We don't accept that things are impossible, just because no one has done them before. On the machine front lines, Admiral Park commanded the final battle of the conventional war. Her fleet engaged the enemy swarms in dozens of star systems simultaneously, drawing their attention and keeping them concentrated for what was coming. All human ships, this is Admiral Park, she broadcast on encrypted channels. In 10 minutes, everything changes. Fight with honor. And remember that we do this not for conquest, but for life itself. The machines had learned to predict human tactics with devastating accuracy. They knew when human ships would phase shift. They anticipated quantum weapon deployments. They had adapted to every trick humanity had developed, but they had no way to predict what happened next at exactly 1,200 hours Galactic Standard Time. Dr. Rivera activated the quantum cascade from his position aboard the Retribution. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. Across the galaxy, the fundamental constants of physics shifted. The quantum foam that allowed faster-than-light travel crystallized into normal space. Energy shields collapsed as their power sources ceased to function. Advanced weapons systems shut down as their exotic matter components became inert. But most importantly, the machine swarm stopped. The artificial beings that had consumed half the galaxy found themselves suddenly reduced to basic metals and ceramics. Their quantum processors failed. Their adaptive programming ceased. Their hive-mind intelligence collapsed into individual units with no way to communicate across interstellar distances that in a single moment, trillions of nearly omnipotent machines became nothing more than floating debris. The cost was immediate and total. Human ships drifted powerless in space as their phase drives failed. Alien vessels found themselves stranded as their jump engines shut down. Space stations lost power as their exotic matter reactors became ordinary metal, but they were alive. The rescue operations took months. Ships with primitive chemical rockets crawled between star systems, collecting survivors and establishing basic communication networks. The galaxy that had once been connected by instantaneous faster-than-light travel was suddenly a vast and lonely place where messages took years to cross between neighboring systems. Sarah Chun found herself aboard one of the rescue ships, helping to coordinate relief efforts for stranded populations. The irony wasn't lost on her. The humans, who had been isolated for 3 years, were now the most experienced at surviving without galactic infrastructure. Captain called Lieutenant Morrison from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission from the Zenturian home system. Chancellor Vextai wants to speak with you. The message took 6 hours to reach them, and their reply would take another 6 hours to return. Real-time communication was now a luxury of the past, but when the Chancellor's image finally appeared on their screen, Sarah could see something in his expression that hadn't been there before. Captain Chun, he began formally, then paused. Sarah, I want you to know that the Galactic Council has voted unanimously on a new resolution. Humanity is hereby granted not just membership in galactic civilization, but leadership of the reconstruction effort. Sarah smiled at the transmission, knowing her reply wouldn't be seen for hours. 3 years ago, you voted unanimously to isolate us because you were afraid we would change your galaxy. Today, you voted unanimously to let us lead because we proved we could save it. Over the following years, a new, galactic civilization slowly emerged from the ashes of the old one. It was simpler, more connected to the worlds that sustained it. Ships that once crossed the galaxy in days now took decades, but they carried cargoes of hope and cooperation that had been rare in the old age of easy travel. Humans found themselves in the strange position of being both students and teachers. They learned about alien cultures with centuries of patience, while teaching other species about human concepts like rapid adaptation and creative problem solving, the Doctor. Rivera established the new Galactic Institute of Physics, where human and alien scientists worked together to slowly rebuild their understanding of the universe. They were careful this time, ensuring that the technology they developed would serve life rather than risk destroying it. Admiral Park became the first director of galactic defense, leading a truly integrated military force where human tactics combined with alien wisdom. The machines had been stopped, but the galaxy had learned that other threats might emerge from the dark spaces between stars, and Captain Sarah Chun found herself appointed as the first human ambassador to the Reformed Galactic Council, a position that hadn't existed when the aliens first voted to isolate her species. Standing before the rebuilt Assembly Hall, she addressed representatives from hundreds of species who now looked to humanity for guidance. 3 years ago, you feared us because we were different, she said, her words being transmitted across the galaxy at the speed of light. Today, we stand together not because we are the same, but because we have learned to value our differences. She paused, looking out at the faces of beings who had once been enemies and were now something closer to family. The machines taught us that intelligence without wisdom leads to destruction. But you have taught us that wisdom without courage leads to stagnation. Together, we can build something better than either of us could achieve alone. The applause took several minutes to circle the chamber, and Sarah realized that for the first time since she had stood in this same place years before, the sound wasn't filled with fear, that IT was filled with hope. The galaxy they saved was smaller than the one they had lost, connected by rockets instead of jump drives, powered by fusion instead of exotic matter. But it was alive, it was growing, and it was theirs to build together. The species that had once voted unanimously to abandon humanity now worked unanimously to follow their lead into an uncertain but hopeful future. And in the end, perhaps that was the greatest victory of all.